few years ago. Here, but he walked out of me.
But rather have absent.
There we go. Remember, you gotta go with the red light. Red light. Let's go. Come on. Let's go.
I'm still doing the second one.
Yes, I've got it.
Go ahead.
I don't know, maybe it's not gonna turn to 30. There we go. All right, call to order the April meeting of the local planning agency. A roll call, please.
Mary Albright.
Linda Glover.
James McPherson.
Sam Kincaid.
Tom Wynn.
We stand for the allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm not sure what's going on with TV.
All right. A motion to approve minutes of the March meeting.
So moved. Second.
You all can go ahead and vote, and I'll just announce what it is, since this isn't working. So it was moved by Ms. Glover and seconded by Ms. Kincaid. It passes unanimously.
All right, and can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'm sorry.
Actually, the first one's for the agenda. This
Yeah.
is for the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Who was the mover on that? Me and Mr. Wynn seconded. If you all can do a manual vote for me.
Sure.
I need to fix something.
Yes.
Is that unanimous?
Unanimous, yes.
Yes.
All right. You're on item number 5.
Okay. It's the variance request to reduce minimum front and rear setbacks at 31 Palm Avenue, or Elm Avenue. Mr. Gibson, you'll be testifying to the city, and then who's the applicant for this? Okay, can you say who, are you going to be speaking to that?
Yes, sir.
And is anyone else going to be speaking with you?
These are some of his neighbors, I think, that might be speaking.
Well, that would be testimony. So, everyone stand and raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, you're sworn in. And before we get started, I just have to do the check for any ex parte communications and ask any of the board members, did anyone from the public contact you about this variance request tonight? If so, just raise your hand and I'll make an inquiry. Okay, so there's no ex parte communications noted by the board. Mr. Gibson.
Good evening, Tim Gibson, Planning Supervisor for the city. In February of this year, I met with the owner, Mr. Shelton Smith, of the property at 31 Elm Avenue Southeast to discuss the possibility of redeveloping the property. It's an older home on the property. He wants to build a new one on there. We discovered when going through this that there's several issues with this property. It is an older subdivision, and at one point in time they were larger lots, but several of the lots on there, not just his, were split in half at one point in time, which makes them non-conforming lot sizes. Now in the LDC, the minimum lot size for R1 properties is defined as 7,200 square foot. The property at 31 Elm is coming in at 4,371 and a half feet. Additionally, the LDC requires a minimum lot width of 75 feet for R1 properties. This property is 62.47 feet wide, so that they're both well under there. The LDC does define, when it comes to nonconformities, it lists a definition of what all benign nonconformities are, And then basically anything that is not one of those is considered to be a detrimental nonconformity. So for the lot size and the lot width, both of those are defined as not more than 10% reduction in there. It would be considered a benign nonconformity. And if it's over 10%, then it would be considered detrimental. The lot size is approximately 39.3% less than the required, and the lot width is approximately 16.7% less than required. Both of those making the property a detrimental nonconformity. And that's where this gets to be a little bit trickier than your normal variance that you've all accustomed to hearing here. Because in addition to the 9 criteria, there's a section of the Land Development Code dealing with expansion of nonconformities. We've dealt with that a few times in the past with this board for structures that were non-conforming. However, this one is for the actual site that is detrimental. LDC section 8.1.7 covers this, and it states in there that a lot size which is detrimental nonconformity may be modified subject to the following standards. The first is which this board would review it. Next is that additional or modified structures or other site features shall be permissible only where such additions or modifications improve the degree of conformity or provide for the public safety. Now the nonconformity on this one is the lot width and the lot size. The new structure on there is obviously not going to have any change to the lot size or lot width, so this would not be increasing it at all on there. The next criteria in there is that the addition or modification of structures or other site features shall not increase the extent of the nonconformity, and that's where this one gets a little bit trickier because right now the front of the current existing building is a nonconformity as it does encroach into that 25-foot front setback. However, the rear of the property right now is sitting at approximately 27 feet setback from the rear property, with the rear setback being 25 feet. That's where this variance application comes in, that the owner is requesting to get a variance to that for that rear setback to become 12 feet instead of the required 25 feet in the Land Development Code. So it would be, the code says you can't increase nonconformities on there for the detrimental site. However, if the variance were granted, then that doesn't become a nonconformity because the variance basically overrides the LDC requirement of that 25-foot rear setback, if that makes sense. Next criteria is that the addition and modification of structures on the site features shall maintain or improve compatibility of the site with the neighborhood in which it is located, and we'll go over that as part of the 9 criteria. And then as a condition of approval of applications to add or modify structures or other site features, the applicant may be required to demonstrate that the site is designed in compliance with the requirements of this LDC with regard to access, sidewalks, drainage, and landscaping. And that's what brings us now into those 9 criteria that's outlined in section 8.2.2 of the Land Development Code. In there, and it states, in order for an application for a variance to be approved or approved with conditions, the local planning agency shall make a positive finding based on the evidence submitted for each of the following provisions. The first of which is that this is due to the unusual or unique physical shape, configuration, or other physical condition of this development site. And as we discussed, the property is approximately 40% smaller than what the minimum required R1 size lot is. And even if this were to be, say, an R2 lot, which would be the other one that would allow for the single-family residence on there, it would still be 13% smaller than what that requirement is. So this is an unusual sized lot, definitely in there. So staff does believe they meet that criteria. Next is that the little interpretation and application of the provisions of this Land Development Code would deprive the property owner of property rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district, resulting in an undue hardship. Staff feels that that this also meets this criteria here. The Land Development Code requires front and rear setbacks of 25 feet and side setbacks of 7.5 feet. And if you were to apply that and then build all within that buildable area, you're looking at approximately 949 square feet would be the maximum allowable footprint of a building to exist in there while meeting all the setbacks, just due to the small size of that. So we feel that would be more restrictive and would deprive them of rights that other people commonly enjoy with their R1 properties. Next would be that the special conditions are not the result of actions of the property owner and are not based solely on a desire to reduce development costs. And as stated, I mean, this site was subdivided many years ago prior to the current owner purchasing the property. Next is that the approval of the proposed variance shall not provide the property any special privilege that is denied to other development sites within the same zoning district. And staff believes that this approval would provide them with a special privilege, as all other R1 zone properties are required to meet these requirements. We would consider possibly a lower variance than what they are requesting in here. Staff would support possibly, but I'll go over that in a minute here. With the next one, that is the proposed variance is the minimum variance that results in a reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. And the proposed site plan on here shows a side setback on one side of 15.7 feet and on the other side 11.8 feet. The minimum side setbacks are 7.5 feet. So the proposal that's been brought in here is basically not to utilize all the conforming developable area, but to extend into that rear setback instead. And that's where staff kind of sees a little bit of an issue with this, on this being the minimum necessary in there, as you know, you're leaving several hundred square foot of conforming area that could be developed that is not being developed with this proposal. Next is that the approval of proposed variance shall ensure compatibility of the resulting development site with the uses and land character of the adjacent and surrounding neighborhood. Staff believes that it would somewhat be compatible with the neighborhood. As I said, this is an older development area. Many of the properties along this site, along the street there, are set back approximately that 20 foot from the front setback. Like I said, the current house on the property is set back 18.9 feet from the front property line, and you do see that pretty much all the way down the street there. So the front setback variance, staff does feel that that would be compatible. Staff's concern is on that rear setback proposal of 12 feet. There are a few houses in the neighborhood that are set back pretty far into their rear setback. However, the vast majority of them do not go that far into that setback. Staff is concerned over that rear setback. Next is that the proposed variance is consistent with the intents and purposes and the requirements of this LDC. One of the key listings in the intents and purposes of the LDC is that we're being equitable in terms of consistency with established regulation and procedures, respecting the rights of property owners while taking into consideration the interests of all citizens of the city. And as stated, staff does not believe that this is the minimum variance needed to successfully develop this property. Finally, next is that it's consistent with the provisions of the comprehensive plan. And staff does believe this is consistent with that. One of the goals in the comprehensive plan is listed as to maintain a safe and adequate supply of housing by preserving existing stable neighborhoods, stabilizing and enhancing neighborhoods that are in transition, and restoring and rehabilitating neighborhoods that have declined. And as this is an older neighborhood with many non-conforming lots, allowing redevelopment on this property, which staff believes is good in that we are maintaining a housing in these areas, and the city is woefully underhoused. Finally, the proposed variance is not detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of the public, and staff does not feel this would be detrimental there. And with that, staff does find that the variance does not meet the criteria outlined in section 8.2.2 of the Land Development Code, and recommends that the local planning agency approve the modification of the property at 31 Elm, however, deny the request for the variance to be reduced the front setbacks to 20 feet and the rear setback to 12 feet. Pending questions.
Did you know that when that subdivision, Villa-Russ subdivision, was developed, that this strip of land that this fellow owns, all the way down from Brook Street to Hollywood, that was a buffer for Villa-Russ from Ocean City subdivision?
I did not.
And when they started selling off the property, I have no idea. I've lived there 45 years. But when the subdivision was built, that was a buffer. And that's why that strip of land is so narrow.
It is very narrow there. They were much wider lots when the subdivision was initially created. Some of them are still pretty wide lots. They kept the original subdivision properties up there. However, this one, as well as several other along the street there, did split in half at some point in time, making them the detrimental nonconformities.
If there's no questions, Mr. Gibson, do you want to allow the applicant to do their presentation?
I think so. I don't want to miss it.
When you get to the microphone, just keep it on the record, your address.
Hello, my name is Sheldon Smith. I'm the property owner at 31 Elm Avenue Southeast. I'm a lifelong City of Fort Walton Beach resident, born and raised here. This property that I have now in my name was my grandmother's property since before the time I was born. And she passed away several years ago, and I recently acquired the property into my name. Didn't know all of this was the case whenever I acquired it, but I'm trying to do what I can to better the area, improve the value of the home that's there. I'd like to build a more efficient home. The home was built in the 50s. Efficiency is very low on it. I don't want to go about remodeling the house. I prefer to do new construction on it. I'm going to touch on the few criteria that Tim had to not recommend. So the one being 2.24 be the first one. Approval of the proposed variance shall not provide the property owner any special privilege that is denied to other development sites within the same zoning district. I find that to be an odd question. Maybe somebody can enlighten me on that, but I'm asking for a variance to this. Could you call a variance a privilege? But basically my response is approval of the variance would relieve me of my undue hardship, not being able to build because it is a detrimental non-conforming lot. He does also explain in that same criteria, staff would potentially support a smaller encroachment. However, the fact that areas that meet setbacks are not being developed leads us to not support this variance request. So that is talking about me not building all the way out to my side setbacks. The reason for that is I'm trying to maintain a decent space between buildings on my side, to the left and to the right of me. The lots behind me are extremely deep lots, and the house is all the way up towards the front of them. So I don't feel like I'm getting too close for comfort to those houses. But I would if I built all the way out to 7.5 feet off of my side setbacks. So also on that, if I maintain the proposed 15.5 and 11.5 feet side room on my side of my lot, I would be able to save some trees that are on the sides of the lot lines. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Elm Avenue, but it's beautiful because of the trees that are there. So if I could save some, I would like to. So the next one is 2.25. The proposed variance is the minimum variance that results in the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Basically, just like I said, had to not recommend because I'm not building all the way out to my side setbacks. I'm trying to utilize the space on my lot so that I maintain a good space between neighboring buildings. The front and rear setback issues, the front and rear setbacks that are in the LDC, the 25 front, 25 rear, on that lot, they make it really hard to design a house. 70-foot deep lot, you take 25 and 25, 50. I have a 20-foot deep buildable space on my lot. It makes it tough to design a house. I want to be able to have a garage on my house. I don't have much room in the yard, no matter what, essentially. It's a very small lot. So I'd like to have a big enough garage to be able to store things, kind of keep the yard cleaner. I feel it would be a better look for the neighborhood if I could do that. So on 2.26, approval of the proposed variance shall ensure compatibility of the resulting development with the use of land and character of the adjacent surrounding neighborhoods. In here, Tim and staff, they said, while there are a couple of houses on the street with similar rear setbacks, the existing house on the property appears to meet rear setback requirements. Reducing the rear setback by more than 50% would have the potential to be a negative impact on the properties that share the rear property line. And again, I do not believe that reducing the rear setback to 12 foot would have a negative impact on the properties that share my rear lot line. Again, because they're such deep lots and the house is much further up towards the front of the lot. I'm more concerned with maintaining a space between my neighbors that are on the left and right of me, because they're both of my adjacent lots, my adjacent neighbors, their lots are also split. They're both 62-foot wide lots as well, so they don't have much space either. And 2.27, the proposed variance is consistent with the intents and purposes of the LDC. Staff believes this proposal does not meet the specified intents of LDC, specifically LDC 1.00.01B7 states that being equitable in terms of consistency with established regulation and procedures respecting the rights of property owners while taking into consideration the interests of all citizens of the city. As stated, staff does not believe this is a minimum variance needed, and this could have a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood. My argument, as mentioned, I do not believe this would have a negative impact on any of the adjacent properties. I have letters from my neighbor that shares my rear lot line, as well as my neighbor that is directly across the street from me. Given those are the setbacks that I would be encroaching into, I felt that I should, get their agreement on my proposed variance. I have those letters if you guys would like to.
That'd be helpful for y'all, correct? Could you provide more than one copy?
I just have one copy.
If you could, I guess, they'll pass it around, I'll
Okay.
keep them though for the record, so you know that.
Gotcha.
And if you get the chairman there. Mr. Chairman, do you want to let the board review those, or do you want them to be presented?
You can continue, we can.
Okay. So as you can see, this is the mapping of the neighborhood. Everything up and down the road essentially is at that 20-foot front setback. I don't believe that in this image you can see some of the buildings that are at, looks like, at least going off of the maps that are online, that it is close to 10 feet off of the rear property line. But definitely some that are less than the 25 that is in the current LDC. Can we go to the building plans?
They've got those on there.
Oh, they've got this. Okay, well, I just wanted to mention, in designing the house, I did my best to keep in mind the privacy of the neighbors that are behind me that share my rear lot line. And that, as you can see, I have a outdoor living space is only on the front of the house. Very minimal windows on the back of the house. Just to try to maintain their privacy, so they don't feel like they're being encroached on.
Curious,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
have an outside stairwell?
Yes, ma'am.
inside as well?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I have a dog, and I'd like to be able to let her be on the balcony, let her outside, not have to bring her through the house and have her make a mess. That would be the reasoning behind that. But that's it for my presentation. I'll take questions from you guys if you have any.
I don't know. So we have too many. What, do we know what the other setbacks are, on the rear setbacks on the houses adjacent, or?
I mean, we could estimate them based off of our GIS on here. I mean, we would need surveys from all of them to give you specific ones. I mean, we can measure out a couple, or we'd have to bring up our actual GIS.
For the most part, they're already inside that 25 feet.
Most of it, again, pretty much that one and going north, they're usually around the 25 foot or less. A few houses south of him, they are back further. Now that's for the principal structures, and that's where we're on the one map, not the satellite view, but the other one, you'll see just kind of the outline of the boxes. Those are the principal structures. Sometimes there's accessory structures on there that if they were permitted many, many years ago, they won't show up on that part of the map. You can see them in the satellite version, so there are like sheds and stuff back there, but those have completely different setback requirements. Typically either 3 foot or 7.5 foot side rear setbacks on those.
Mr. Chairman, just so the audio includes what these letters were, it appears there's one letter from 30 Elm Avenue's owner, Jack Shields, and Linda Morrow, consenting or agreeing with the applicant. And also from 77 Waynell Circle, Jeffrey Triplett, who also has agreed to the variance request with the understanding that the second floor construction is according to plans provided. And staff object to these being entered into the record?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you've got questions on specifically setback ones, well, you can measure down on there. Right now, that one, the one to the north, the setback, it looks like about approximately 22.5 feet. Some of the ones like 37. Out there, it's a lot closer
To the back line or the front?
to the back line. A lot of them sit around the 20 foot along the front. That seems to be kind of standard for there. And again, with the staff would not necessarily have an objection to that 20 foot front setback. That was about 18 feet for there at 37. So you can see they are, depending on where they're at, they get a little bit closer, but it looks like maybe that 17, 18 foot would be about as close as they get right now.
Well, I will say, and I've lived over here for a long, long time, Elm is one of the most beautiful streets in our little town. I mean, I love to drive down Elm, but, you know, a single family dwelling, I think, just beats them all. So I would hate to see us not help the guy out. I'm for a nice new home going up. And I'm sure the city loves more higher taxes.
You don't collect any on it now. So how many trees are going to be affected?
So there'd be 3 trees that are on it would be the south side, my south lot line, that I'd be able to save.
You'll be able to save those?
Yes, ma'am. And I would also save, there's a rather large oak tree in my front yard that I would save also. Yeah, so you can, that's the one in the front yard I would save. And then these ones that are on the right side, the south side.
We have a beautiful city.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, you have a question? I was going to say, they were asking questions. The odd thing about this hearing here tonight is because there are members from the public here, I think, wanting to possibly speak either for or against it. There's actually an evidentiary portion for the public before public comment. So I guess just once y'all are done with questions, let me know.
I'll wait.
I was just about to ask, are we going to hear from them now?
We should hear from them if you're done, Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So next, before we actually do the non-testimonial public comment, there is an opportunity for affected parties to oppose the application, and that would be anyone that was within the notice range that was provided notice by staff. And so I don't know if any of the members of
Yeah, that'd be me.
And, okay, sir, then you gotta get sworn in then, so.
Yep.
All right, raise your right hand, you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're sworn in, and when you get to the microphone, just give your name and your address.
My name is Roger Main. My wife Kim here is with me tonight. I live at 75 Waynell, beautiful 75 Waynell Circle, right there. And, you know, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I really wouldn't. My problem is with 29 Elm. What's going to happen when 29 Elm comes and says the same thing? Give me a variance, all right? Last week I had a motorhome, Sheldon, didn't we? You were there. We had a motorhome. A guy jammed a 17-turn motorhome behind my house so he could sit in there and watch my wife and I at our beautiful pool, okay? It's a short-term rental. I don't know what platform he's renting it out on. I can't find it anywhere. It's on the dark web, I think, because people just keep showing up. Now I got another short-term rental across the street. Now I got somebody next door to me wanting to put it. Here's my problem with all of this and the planning of this scheme. I don't see a plan. I really don't. These are very unique. I spoke with Congressman Matt Gaetz 2 weeks ago at the airport, and what did we talk about? Elm Street. We talked about how beautiful, and then I told him, I said, yeah, Matt, I watched a 120-foot crane take a perfect long leaf pine tree out from the bottom, lay it in the street, and they took it away. All I heard was, it sounds like a lumberjack jamboree in my neighborhood. Through this weekend, I watched the landscape in front of my house change. They clear cut a lot. And you're seeing it all over Elliott Point. Everywhere I go, I see it. We got a golf court and a beautiful golf cart community, and I ride around in it. And that's what I see. So we have to make a choice. Okay? We have to make a choice. Either we're going to make this change, or we're going to attempt to slow it down and control it. And as Ms. Glover just said, that used to be a buffer, but somebody figured out that they could make a little money by building them little cottages there, and that's what they did. And now, 29 Elm's going to be in here next week wanting to build some monstrosity in my backyard, and we already told Sheldon he can do it. Now what are we going to tell him? What are we going to tell the next one up there? What are we going to tell the next one down there till they're building them in your backyard?
Honey, they've already built them in my backyard.
I get it, but I don't want them build it in my backyard. Last time I came here, I got called a NIMBY. Not in my backyard, and you know what? I am a NIMBY. I don't want it in my backyard. I don't want to see the short-term. This man just stood up here and said we got a housing problem, and I got short-term rentals all over my neighborhood. And don't tell me I don't know where they're at. I'm in the tourism business. I talk to over 400 tourists a week, and I hear all the stories. The bad bathroom stories, the how long they got to wait for Uber and Lyfts, how they're feeling they're being taken advantage of. They're one and done because they're spending more here than they would going to the Dominican Republic. All right? This is my home. I've been here 20 years. This is my retirement gig. Everybody get it? I'm not worried about what I'm going to leave for my kids and grandkids. I'm worried about what's going to be left for me. Can't take my wife to the Okaloosa Island because she got a skin condition from the water. The water. I went over the bridge the other day, Brooks Bridge, in the traffic. It looked like the Spanish Armada was sorting out of Santa Rosa Sound. So how many more of them pontoon boats are we going to... Is my time up? Chairman's looking at me like, we heard enough. All right, listen. I'm getting off my car. I'm going to get off my soapbox here. But again, I'm not worried about Sheldon. You know, because you know what? Sounds like he's a pretty smart guy and he'll probably modify his building plans. I'm worried about 29L, and I'm worried about the next one, and I'm worried about the next one down there. Okay? So I say no. You start granting these type of things, it's going to be like a landslide. Thanks.
Anyone else want to testify as a, there will be a chance for non-testimonial public comment. Okay.
No?
And then you can either take public comment and then ask further questions, or take public comment and make a motion.
Okay. Are there any more public comments? Nobody else wants to?
Well, all I can say, and I live there, it's a lot of odd building down that street because of the size of the lots. And truly, I mean, 90% of them are already built on, and how they got their variances or whatever, I don't know. I wasn't on the board then, but it's a beautiful street. I think he's gonna improve the property, but again, 29, what do we know about it? I don't know. But today we're working with this gentleman.
Yeah, I don't think we can comment too much on 29 until,
No, not at
yeah,
all.
so.
You are limited to the world of 31.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I have a question. What's the current size of the house on there now?
Roughly 400 square feet.
And what's this one gonna
Just
be?
come up to the
Oh, sorry.
audio. Sorry.
And what's this one gonna be?
This one is roughly 1,400 living. The actual footprint of it is 38 foot deep by 32 feet wide.
What's the 400 square foot house? What's its footprint? It's all-
It's only
Do we have
single
that
story.
survey?
I don't
Or-
have, this is the county
It's
property
450,
website.
it's probably
Gotcha.
20.
Are you the owner and builder?
I'm sorry, sir, what was that?
Are you the owner and builder and designer of the house?
Yes, sir.
One thing I like, a couple of the things that you've done, I appreciate you saving the trees. I usually walk down Elm all the time, because people drive down Brook Street, where I live, and they try to run you over as you're in the street, because you can't walk anywhere but on the street. I do like it that your back of the house has mostly low windows, and the higher windows are very transomy.
Yes, ma'am, like above the kitchen sink, above the
Correct. And I
tub
like
in
that.
the bath. Yes, ma'am.
I think that was a good choice. If I were your neighbor, I would be thankful that you stayed away from my sides of my house. So I think that was probably, I know those houses need some upgrades.
Yes, ma'am.
They really do. I think your plan is nice. It's really only a 2-bedroom though?
It is, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want things to grow too much there. But I think you've done a nice, if you drive down Brook Street, I think you'll see almost the same,
Yes, correct.
House.
Correct, with the staircase in the front.
yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So I think you've done well with your plans. I think you've thought about other things, and I like the windows and saving the trees.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, is there a permeability, is there still 50% permeability on smaller lots like there is?
It's 50% for R1 properties. So yeah,
Okay.
it will have to still remain 50% permeable.
So there's no
50%
variance for
impervious.
that, even though you're building a bigger structure? Or
You'll still be able to stay with under the 50%
Okay.
here. I mean, there's a lot of ways around that. It will still be something we will have to enforce. You can do like gravel driveways even if you wanted to, or there's actual pervious asphalt, pervious concrete, if it came right down to it. So, for the smaller lots, it is restrictive on there because we will still have to meet the 50%.
Anyone else? All right, can I have a motion?
If if I can, real quick, we really need two different things on this one. One is an approval by a local planning agency to just for him to modify the site. Was the first part of the stuff I went over. And then the second would be for the actual variance request.
I'm sorry, say the first thing again.
Since this is a detrimental non-conforming site,
Okay.
it specifically had to be approved by the LPA for him to modify the site at all. So I did draft this up as basically having two separate orders with it. One would be regarding whether the variance is approved or not, and then the second one would be for just the approval for him to make the modifications to the site as required.
If you go to page 11 of the packet, I have a hard copy if y'all want to see it. Pass around.
What did you do? I didn't find that.
I'll make a motion to approve the first part.
Second,
of the-
So that would be, you made a motion to
approve the variance.
approve the modification of the property.
Modification.
Okay. So,
If you all give me just 1 second, it's not set up that way, so I'm gonna add that motion.
What's away?
Are we manually
I've been
voting?
away a long time.
Okay, are you ready to vote?
Yes?
Yes.
So I move. All right, motion is approved.
I move to approve the variance.
I will second.
And do you make your motion based on all the factors listed in the section .8.02.02 of the Land Development Code?
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
And does your second include that?
Yes. All right, motion carries. Good luck. Very good, good luck.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
We're watching.
These letters.
Thank you.
No, he just gave them. He just gave them.
Huh?
29 on the donut place down there.
He's a slum walker. I do have a question just while we're waiting for the door. Is the city complying when they know these are short-term rentals or Airbnbs? Are they complying with the law for Florida?
Florida statute prohibits on municipalities from regulating duration, number, anything. The only thing
But
we
are
can
they
enforce
qualified
is,
in what their classes they're taking and the way they're renting them? So
That-
they have to comply under restaurant and hotel law.
they should, yes. Florida statute prohibits us from doing any kind of regulations on any of that, though. Like I said, it's pretty, we've gone through it a little bit. We've been working with Ms. Kopp on possibly coming up with some creative ways around that. There's been a lot of municipalities trying to do so. It's a tough nut to crack on those. There's been a lot of places
Because-
trying to do it and unsuccessfully so.
In my industry, when someone buys and wants to do that, I have to give them that they have to comply with the sex trafficking laws and classes and et cetera. So
Yeah.
I think we need to figure out some other ways so that we do ask them to comply.
Part of the problem, I mean, is just, we can enforce our own ordinances.
Sure.
If DBPR has rules and requirements that they're not following, I can't go enforce DBPR regulations.
We'll work on
That's what it
that.
just kind of comes down to.
I think the state legislature did amend the short-term rental statute this year. I think they're swinging back So for a long time, they've been swinging, just let people do whatever they want.
Right.
I think there's been like, this is the first time they've pulled back a little bit, to make it a little bit harder, so I think there might be a little bit of blowback, and like they realize that maybe it let get out of control, but again, like Mr. Gibson said, most of it's preempted right now, and I know Walton County's being really aggressive with the way they handle it, super aggressive, but they also have a massive budget to do it, and so they are willing to spend millions and millions of dollars in court to fight, one homeowner over it to make an example out of them, so, I don't know if Fort Walton has quite that money to spend on it, because no one's going to get family party attorney's fees usually.
Well, they're gonna get more taxes now.
They will, sure.
Off of 31.
I mean, if you'll take a pay cut, I mean, no.
That'd be dropping the bucket.
Before we move on, that gentleman's concern is kind of a big one. Because I was the person that went up to the board and asked about some stuff before, and not to be, falling on deaf ears. Is there anything that we can do?
Sadly, really no, and I'm gonna reach out to Mr. Smith, because it seems like they all know each other, and maybe trying to get some contact with that guy to kind of give him some education on some of these things. Florida statute prohibits us from regulating or prohibiting any removals of trees on residential properties, single-family residential properties. So if you want to go in there and clear cut, this 400-year-old oak on your property, there is nothing the city can do to stop it.
What about,
we don't even permit it because it's state restricts
Cut
it.
a magnolia
what
tree.
about like if you're building a house with 2 stories, would we give a special, setback to have like the windows at a certain height that it can't, view in someone else's backyard or something like that?
We do have height compatibility standards, which is like dealing with the variance that we had with the housing authority
Right.
Last time. I mean, so that's really all we have in there is that 1.5 times. So basically, if you got predominantly 1-story houses, we're only gonna let you build a 2-story house. We wouldn't let you build a 3-story house, just because you would be kind of towering over them. Other than that, though, as far as window placements or something, I mean, it's really just people are free to develop.
Okay.
He did a very good job.
I'm sorry?
The windows in the back were very well placed.
Can we move on?
Okay, is this item 5.2? Are we ready?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, this is ordinance number 2141, an ordinance to rezone 327 Eglin Parkway North from MX1 to CG. It's a quasi-judicial hearing, and it's an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for the property located at 327 Eglin Parkway North to be rezoned from MX1 to CG, providing for the amendment of the effective portion of the official zoning map, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. And unlike most ordinance hearings, this actually is a quasi-judicial hearing because there's an applicant seeking it. And so just before we actually get started, I do have to ask the board, has anyone from the public or the applicant contacted you? It's not against the law, I just have to put it on the record so that the city has a chance to respond to it. Okay. All the board members have shook their head no, so there's been no ex parte communications. Mr. Gibson, you're always sworn in. Does the applicant want to stand for it? Do you swear to tell the truth, all the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, sir? Okay, so when you come up here, you'll be on our oath. Whenever you're ready, begin, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So the next 2 items, I'll kind of give a lot of the background for kind of together here as they are connected. It really dates back to 2016 when this property was actually annexed into the city. The intent at the time was to put a Walmart neighborhood market on there. There was some concerns when it was annexed in from some of the residential neighborhoods around there about the impact of that, specifically along First and Middle Drive there. So they did, while they annexed in, they established the zoning of MX1, mixed-use medium, for the predominant part of the property. And then, as you know, typical Walmart neighborhood markets, they have a little small gas station. They had zoned that part MX2 that would allow for the gas station there. And then they followed up on that with the planned unit development, which is a zoning overlay that can basically add more restrictions than what the land development code does. It just makes it so that you can do kind of some of these one-off developments to answer some of those concerns or questions that would otherwise come up in there. So all of that was done, finished up on June 27th, 2017. Then obviously the neighborhood market fell through. They did find another development that could go in there, which was the Sevco gas station, if you're familiar with it now, that has gone in there. However, the PUD still remained in place there, so we had to do an amendment to that. But we also had to rezone the underlying portion. As I said, initially it was just a small corner that was zoned as MX2 for the gas station, but as the Sevco was going to be over about half that size, half the property, we had to rezone the underlying portion over there to make it all MX2 there, while the northern part that we're talking about now remained as the MX1 zoning district in there. So that was all done back in 2020 and 2021. And then when that PUD was redone, basically the specifics of it were done for the Sevco, and then the northern portion just basically stated that it would have to be a PUD amendment in the future once we knew what was planned for that area there. But did state that they would still follow the same restrictions such as landscape buffers and all of those things to protect that residential neighborhood. On January 31st of this year, we did receive a request from Henderson Engineering Consulting, authorized agent on behalf of the property owner, to rezone 327 Eglin Parkway North from MX1 to CG. And just to clarify this, so with the planned unit developments, they're what we call a zoning overlay. The existing zoning still remains underneath of there. However, it's really more governed by the planned unit development that kind of sits on top of it. But the one thing that the planned unit development cannot override is the allowable uses within that zoning district. And so that's really what brings us here today, is what they're proposing to do on the property now would not be allowed in the MX1 zoning district. It would require it to be rezoned to commercial in order for this to be allowed to develop in there. So that kind of brings us to where we're at right now. Again, this is for 327 Eglin Parkway North. It has a future land use of mixed use, and the current zoning designation is planned unit development with the underlying zoning of MX1. To the south of the property is where this property is where that Sevco is currently sitting. And then to the west, which is across the other side of Eglin there, it's all county property, but it's all zoned commercial with the county, C3 general commercial. To the north of this, there's the little small section, kind of a cutout, that is commercial with the county, and then the rest of it is residential to the north there, as it is to the east, which is county residential. They do wish to develop this property now into a landscape material company, and they have submitted the request to rezone the underlying MX1 zoning to the CG to support that development. Land Development Code Table 2.3.2 shows that landscaping material companies are only allowed in the CG, CTP, and MB zoning districts. The only one that would be possibly compatible with this area would be that CG zoning district. Now the LDC section 2.1.5 does outline criteria to be used for determining the appropriate zoning district. The first of that one is with it's consistent with the future land use, and CG is an allowable future land use, allowable zoning district in the mixed use future land use that it currently is in, so that would be compatible. Next is with it's compatible with the uses in the adjacent zoning districts. As I stated earlier, the commercial zoning district is to the partly to the north, and then also across the street to the east. To the west of this property. The proposed modified planned unit development does address concerns that were previously voiced by the residents in the adjacent residential areas, and in consideration of the planned unit development plans that are outlined in there, we do feel that this would be compatible with those adjacent zoning districts. Primary access for the property will be from Eglin Parkway, which matches the zoning districts pretty much all along the street there with them. Next is whether this is substantially more intense or less intense than the allowable development on adjacent parcels. Obviously, this is much more intense than the residential areas. However, again, with those buffers that are built in and the separations that are on there, staff does feel that this would not be an issue with those neighboring properties. And next is whether the requested use is based on soil types, topography, protection of natural resources, and protection of the designated historic areas. And as always, I mean, this is going through the same process with everyone else, where we're gonna make sure that all of those code requirements are followed in there. With that, staff does find that the proposed zoning is consistent with the existing future land use, that this is compatible with the uses in the adjacent zoning districts, and considering the planned unit development is not more or less intense than the allowable development on adjacent parcels. And with that, staff respectfully recommends the local planning agency forward a recommendation to City Council approving the request for a change to the underlying zoning for 327 Eglin Parkway North, and approving ordinance 2141 to rezone the property from MX1 to CG.
Question. MX1, what falls under that zoning?
It's mixed-use medium. It allows for a very wide range, everything from single-family residential, multifamily residential, and pretty much all of your commercial activity, offices, dental clinics, medical clinics, anything along with retail stores, all of that kind of stuff is allowed in there. Some of the more intense ones, you know, your gas stations, that kind of stuff, would not be allowed in the MX1 district.
Why is this one not? Why is landscaping not?
It's just in the code, it's not allowed in there. It is kind of that more industrial, you could have some larger trucks in there, loading and unloading gravel or whatever in there, so it's a little bit more intense than what, some of these other office, those types of things would be allowed in there.
But right up the street, there is a gravel company.
It's in the county.
And then there's a lumber yard.
That's correct.
Okay.
But
And that's
Walmart
partly why
doesn't
staff
have
believes
any
this
big
would be
trucks.
compatible out there.
Walmart doesn't have, or the neighborhood
We don't have
store
a
doesn't
Walmart.
have, I understand, but when it was accepted, they don't have big trucks that come in and out of there.
I missed what you're saying.
And with the Walmart and the original PUD, it was addressed in there,
Yeah.
as far as like their delivery trucks, and they had specific hours and everything that were addressed in there. A lot of those specifics, we'll get into in the next item, which is specifically the planned unit development amendment, that they do address, those types of things. For example, there is gonna be one, connection to, north there, that in the original PUD said would not be allowed there. However, it's gonna be gated after hours. So it's only gonna be open during normal business hours. It'll be gated after that, so there'll be no truck activity or anything on there. And that's outlined in that planned unit development.
And C, commercial general does fit within the future land use map under MX2.
It does, yes. It is allowable under mixed use.
Say that one again.
It just, y'all can never make a determination that allows a certain type of zoning to not be within the future land use maps zoning designation. And MX2 is, it has to be less intensive, correct, than MX2, like the commercial general basically has to be equivalent or lesser than as allowable zoning, correct?
For future land use?
Yeah, for future land, so it's compatible with the future land use map.
The future land use map, I mean, in chapter 2 of our LDC, basically we got a table in there that shows all of future land uses and then the zonings that are allowable under there.
But MX2 allows CG, commercial general, correct?
Well, MX2 is a zoning district, not a future land use.
Right, but MX2 is a future land use designation. You can rezone it to commercial general. Correct.
Future land use is the MU.
Right.
Just mixed use.
Yeah.
Under there, MX1, MX2, commercial are all allowable zoning districts.
So the
right now, it's
intensity is
MX1
allowed.
zoned. Can you get to the CG zone, still fits within that mixed use future land use.
And so they're not asking for something more intensive tonight than what's already allowed in future land use. Right?
Well, it would be a lot less, wouldn't it?
It depends what you would do, I think, with the, like the mixed use, I think you said doctor's offices could be in there as an example. If you had a clinic with a lot of people outside, that could definitely be more intensive, but I don't think they'll be able to justify that. I think it's to the
is
It's
high.
use.
So MX1 is a medium, MX2 is high. So it must be more.
I think what he's getting at is, right now, the future land use is the one that's approved by the state and the city's comprehensive plan. And under that, it basically already allows up to that commercial use. So we're not changing that future land use, which is a little bit more touchy, as that is one that's approved by city council and then approved by the state under the comprehensive plan. This is already approved under the comprehensive plan for this to be a CG zone property,
Okay.
I see.
I think.
All right.
Yeah, it's all based on intensity, they're considered, correct.
All right. Public comments on this one?
I think the applicant wants to.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I like,
Oh, I like pictures.
So if you're gonna get to the PUD side, I would say wait to the next one we're about to do, sir.
What's that?
If you're going into the PUD, I'd wait until we do the next.
Okay, you don't wanna,
Is that what that's for right there? Is that the main use development?
little site plan.
And that might be more
Did anybody
applicable
bring
to
their
the main use. So,
binoculars?
I would wait till the
I
end.
can leave it up?
Yeah,
Take
you
it
know,
down?
it's good for everyone to look at.
Yeah. I had the Walmart on the back, I was gonna do a little compare and contrast.
we can't.
So, MX1 allows a Walmart neighborhood grocery store, but it doesn't allow a landscape supply company. That's kind of, I don't know, a
Well,
little
that's
strange. to
where
me.
my question about
Yeah.
intensity, I mean.
You would think that the Walmart's a little more intense than the landscape company,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, it just doesn't allow it in the land development code. So that's the reason for the change. This is for construction materials. You mentioned the gravel company right up the street. That is construction materials. They're only like 2 or 3 blocks up out of the parkway. Currently, they do aggregates, topsoil, mulch. They want to expand. They want to go into planting materials. They want to go into decorative stone. So the areas back in here would have the aggregate, the mulch, that sort of stuff. This would be the planting areas, and this will be the decorative stone that people could see. So
This will be more germane to the next hearing. The one we'll do in 5 minutes, just so we
Okay.
can have a clean record, so that's.
well,
So are the gravel company that's up the street, is this the same people?
yeah, they're moving here. They want to move over here. They've been there 12 years, and they just want to expand their business.
They're
They
expanding.
need some more area.
They're expanding, not moving. Or they are,
They're moving to here.
but they're gonna keep that place.
No,
No. okay.
no, they're gonna move all their stuff here. It's a significantly bigger site. So they can add more inventory.
So the county lost them, we gained them.
Yeah,
Look at that. There's your taxes again. There you go.
That's county.
so I don't know. I mean, the PUD is so tied to the rezoning, I don't really know what to talk about. I was gonna tell you all about the site
We'll be able to do
plan.
last one, you have to do it twice. That's what we're
Yeah. Well, if you deny the zoning, then I won't have to do it at all.
So, the trucks will pull into the property because of the size to unload?
Well, yeah, there'll be like the aggregate, the topsoil and stuff, yeah, there'll be dump trucks delivering that. Now, this road will be gated, there's always been an access here, there currently is one. This will be gated to the Sepco, and this will be gated. So there will be no after-hours traffic, unlike the Walmart. There was.
Interject, because this will be on the next presentation we'll do in 5 minutes. This is just the zoning designation. And I know there's people from the public wanting to speak on the 2 separate items, so I just want to keep it clear.
If I can, they are different, but connected in there. The change to the zoning is really allowing anything that's in the CG zoning district. Their plan is to do this landscape material company, and that's where that plan use development comes in. This is simply for the zoning that would allow any of the CG uses to be in there.
Now,
And I think Mr. Gibson also indicated earlier, his presentation will be much shorter for the planned unit development presentation, because he did all the background knowledge for you too, so you wanted to hear his whole presentation the second time.
now, before this was annexed into the city, this whole front area was a used car lot. I mean, mean, y'all probably remember that for years. So it was already commercial back when it was in the county. The south area, or the east area wasn't commercial, but that's why we're pushing all the commercial activity up toward the parkway. So part of it was commercial, when it was in the county. So I think that's all I have to say about the rezoning, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
And y'all have a chance to do the whole presentation.
Yeah.
in this minute, so.
All right, I don't have any questions. Any questions?
Well, you've got public.
Public?
Oh yeah, we're getting rid of the old building. We can talk about that in the pub too, I guess, but that's probably something everybody would like to know.
Do you want to, I think there's members of the public that want to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sir, just your name and address.
Yeah. My name's Raymond McLeod. I live right across the street on Middle Drive where they're wanting to rezone it. My concern is if they do rezone it and this company backs out, what could they build? Could they build a motel right in front of us, or I was just concerned about the rezoning part. I didn't know if the construction people could come in as it's zoned now and do what they want to, but like he said, the east part of the property wasn't commercial, it was residential. There were about 6 lots in there, and they tore one of the houses down when they were going to do the Walmart. One of the houses was on the corner of South and Middle, and that's all, that strip of land was residential property. But I'm just concerned about what they could put if this company went out of business or closed up. What could they put, and could they start coming out on Middle and First and everything else? But that's what I want to say.
Mr. McLeod, I'm going to get Mr. Tim to answer that.
In theory, he's absolutely correct. If they decide, oh, I want to put a hotel there, the CG zoning district would allow for a hotel to go in there. However, that's where they are tied together with the planned unit development. For anything to happen on that property, they have to have an updated planned unit development and a major development order that's approved by city council. So theoretically, we're going to hear in a moment that the PUD, which is also connected with the major development order for this exact property. If in theory, this were to fall through and they decide, you know what, we're not going to do this construction company here, we're going to go to a hotel. We'll be back here in a few months presenting the PUD to you again, saying they're going to do a hotel, and it would be right back in here. So yes, it would allow any of the uses in the CG zoning district, but it would still have to come through specific approval or recommendation for approval by the LPA, and then final approval by the city council for any development on the property.
But they would, but the correct zoning would be there for the hotel.
Absolutely, yes.
Is it there now?
We
Is it
change it
mixed
now.
use now? Is mixed use?
With MX1, no, a hotel would not be allowed in MX1.
Interesting.
So if we change the zoning today, it opens the property up to just about anything?
It does, and I don't want to cross over too much, but that's why when the original Walmart neighborhood market was in there, there was a lot of restrictions put in there that there could be no access off of Middle Drive, that there had to be larger landscape buffers to separate Middle Drive from any of the activities on there. They had to have walls around like their loading zones and stuff just to keep any noise out of those areas. And that's where the planned unit developments are very important for these types of things. Because typically, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily want a commercial zone district right next to single-family residential. However, when you can enact those extra kind of layers of protection with that planned unit development in there, where you can restrict those things, because the typical buffer requirement is 5 foot. This is going to be much greater than that. And that's where this basically gives a lot more flexibility and would allow that hotel to be in there But again, I mean, if they were to come back in a few months and say, yeah, we're gonna do a hotel now instead, and it's gonna access off of Middle Drive, I'm pretty sure they would not be the only public here concerned about that, and I'm pretty sure city council would probably have something to say. Now, could they theoretically approve it? Yes. I would not anticipate something like that actually happening.
But Middle Drive, to the right of this map, is county, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
We still, I mean, whether it's county, city, we do definitely, I mean, we look at whatever the compatible zoning and stuff is around there.
Absolutely.
And that's where along Eglin, moving north, that's all county commercial.
Okay.
So, I mean, in theory, just to the north there, the county, in the county commercial zoning, they could build a hotel right there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, may I
Say
say
that
something?
again?
So just north of this property is where it starts being county, and it's all zoned commercial right there.
Right.
So theoretically, if you go to the other side of north, which is zoned county commercial, they can build a hotel right there, right now, under the current zoning in the county.
Oh,
But not.
That would be enough.
Not Middle Drive, no, along that.
good.
Yeah.
But that doesn't back up the Middle Drive because you got that buffer of residential behind
But
it.
they back up to the residential.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what I was gonna say is, before this was annexed into the city, this was all commercial. They could have put a hotel up there before it was annexed in. It was annexed in as part of the Walmart, which never came through.
And if I can, real quick, I just lied to all y'all inadvertently. Amy looked up our table of allowable uses, and a hotel is allowed in MX1 zoning. So theoretically, under the current zoning, they could put a hotel there.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, that makes it easier then.
Yeah.
What about the buffer zone along Middle Drive?
I'm sorry? In theory, yes. The current existing PUD, again, requires those buffers to be in there, and it states in the existing PUD that there can be no access on Middle Drive, period, to that property. Now, in theory, could they change the plan unit development and say we're gonna access on the middle? Yes. Again, it would come back through this process, through you, to city council, to say, yes, we're agreeing to that access on the Middle Drive. Right now, I mean, that's why we're here to re-examine this PUD. I mean, basically, all the old ones go out and the new ones are in there. However, that's why we take a close look at this and make sure that we're maintaining some of those same protections that were there when the initial PUD was put into place.
Okay, so no big trucks can access this property
After hours.
from Middle Drive.
And that'll be in the
Yeah,
PUD.
but that'll be in the PUD.
So we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
I'd like to move to accept ordinance 2141 to rezone the property from MX1 to CG.
One second.
Now, moving on.
Ordinance number 2142, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, provide for authority, provide for findings of fact, provide for property located at 327 Avon Parkway North to update plan unit development and zoning overlay, provide for the approval of the site development plan, major development order, provide for severability, provide for an effective date. And I believe all the witnesses are the same in this hearing from the last one, so no one else needs to be sworn in. And I'm assuming the answer is the same from a minute ago. There's been no ex parte communications made to any board members, correct?
Correct.
I see all, everyone not. So there's, the record reflects there's been no ex parte communications. Yes.
All right, so again, unless you want to or have questions about the history, I'm not going to go over that again. But this one now is for the plan unit development update. Per section 4.6.01 of the Land Development Code, a plan unit development is an overlay available to encourage flexibility in design and development of land and allow improved design and quality in new development. The PUD is intended to provide for diversification and integration of uses and structures consistent with the underlying zoning district. And again, this is what gives that flexibility in there that otherwise might not be available in those things. Specifically for this property, this is approximately 3.06 acres. We've already gone over what the surrounding land uses are for there. So first is to look at whether or not this conforms with the city's comprehensive plan. And the city does believe that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, specifically policy 8.1.6 allows for commercial uses in the mixed-use land use district, which deals with what we just did with the rezoning in there. Section 4.6.3 of the code does outline several requirements to look at when examining for a planned unit development. First is that landscape buffers shall be provided at the perimeter of development parcel when the adjacent zoning district provides for less intense development as measured by residential density and floor area ratio. And this is where it really becomes important in here with those surrounding residential districts. So for any PUD, we would have to examine these residential buffers that are on there. That's outlined in the code. And now this project has proposed an expanded landscape buffer along the eastern portion of the site. What would be required as the rear property line, as this is addressed off of Eglin, would be a 5-foot buffer. That's what the landscape or the land development code requires for all commercial developments if there were not a PUD on there. This proposal is to provide approximately 70 feet from the edge of Middle Drive before you start getting to like where they're going to have the materials. So there's going to be about 70 feet instead of 5 feet that's going to be in there. Now in there they've got some specific landscaped areas. They've got the original vegetation is there, some more proposed plantings in there as well. There's going to be a stormwater retention pond, and then some more area before they get into the actual like areas where they're going to have the aggregate mulch and stuff like Mr. Henderson talked about there. Next would be about making sure plazas, courtyards, and recreation facilities and stuff are buffered. There are none of those proposed here, which is the same thing for outdoor lighting. There is no proposed outdoor lighting. However, if any is in there, it is outlined in the plan unit development that they will be shielded and not pointed towards Middle Drive or First Avenue. Next is the parking lots, drive-through lanes, and loading areas shall be located and buffered to protect adjacent properties from noise, light, and loss of privacy. And the parking areas for this will be on the western portion of the property closer to Eglin. And again, that primary entrance is there along Eglin. Next is that dumpsters are not located in a perimeter adjacent to property zone for residential use, and the proposed dumpster location will be on the interior of the property and will be screened from the adjacent residential property, so it will not be adjacent to any residential areas. Next is regarding loudspeakers, but there's none proposed for this project. And then traffic and access control, and that's where vehicle access will be connected to Eglin Parkway and First Avenue and through the CEFCO fuel station is there. If you've seen, there's a little kind of outlet already there that's kind of got a barricade with it. It will connect into there as well. Access control limitations were imposed by the Walmart Neighborhood Market PUD, which prohibited driveways or vehicular access along Middle Drive and First Avenue. So this is going to be a little departure from that original Walmart Neighborhood PUD with the access remaining on First Avenue. Now I will point out on there that, again, they do have it written in there in the plan unit development, which will be binding, that they will be, that will be gated property, and there will be no after hours, just normal regular business hours usage of that driveway. In addition, when reviewing the site plans for this, the fire department specifically asked for that access to remain, just so that the fire trucks will have better access in and around the property there. So that was a request by our fire department to keep that there as well. And with that, based on the staff's review, we find that this development is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, that it is compatible with the surrounding properties, and the intensity of development is compatible with the surrounding physical environment. And then there's a few more as this does go into with the planned unit development. There's also a major development order that has a lot more specifics that does not get reviewed by the LPA, but it will be presented at the same time to City Council, the major development order and the planned unit development. And that's going to address basically all the development specifics on the property as far as how their trees are handled and impervious, all of that sort of stuff is in that major development order, and that has all been reviewed for compliance with the land development code. And with that, staff respectfully recommends the local planning agency forward a recommendation to City Council approving the request to update the planned unit development for 327 Eglin Parkway North and approving ordinance 2142 to adopt the proposed planned unit development and site development plan.
You have a question? May I speak?
Oh, yeah.
Did I understand you to say that there would be a 70-foot buffer?
That is correct. From
He's
the
gonna
edge of
lose
Middle
that
Drive
much land.
to where they go, and you can see, I'll use your map. You have Middle Drive here,
Okay.
and they don't actually have the landscaping listed on here, but there's gonna be landscaping all along Middle Drive. There's the stormwater retention area, and then another 17.5 feet before you get to the edge of where their outdoor storage is gonna be. So that's approximately 70 feet from the edge of Middle Drive to the edge of this outdoor storage area. That's why staff's a little not concerned about that compatibility necessarily in there, and that you do have that large buffer that is built in there.
Oh, and I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't listening. There's gonna actually be a driveway from this property onto First.
So it basically connects, it's already there right now. This, so I mean, this is the, not part of this property, it's commercial, and then there's, basically it was an alley that was vacated at one point. It's existing here right now. That's just going to remain there. It's already in existence.
Okay. Just wanted it clear.
I guess the biggest difference would be the previous PUDs, that you could not allow it, where this will actually allow them to use that alleyway.
Yes.
All right.
You're on.
So I'd like to say something about this long linear stormwater retention area. Of course, we have from the property line to the retention area, we have 22.5 feet. That was the same as the wall front. There's a lot of vegetation out in the right of way. We're gonna leave the fence, all that vegetation and all the vegetation in the 22.5 foot buffer. We're even gonna supplement that with some more oak trees. We have this long linear stormwater retention area, and over here there's some stormwater piping that we're gonna tie into the counties. We've already talked to them about it. So once we have this infrastructure in place, if they don't stay there and somebody else comes in later, it's gonna be hard to change all this infrastructure around. All the land slopes this way, that's where the natural stormwater area should be. So that buffer is likely to stay in place in the future if anything ever was to change there. Like Tim mentioned, another 17.5 foot. This is all just outdoor storage. Here's the, this is a little oriented a little different. This shows the Walmart. And they have the same 22.5 foot buffer, and then they have a wall there. But then their driveway was right there in the building. So their building was only 50 feet from the property line. Okay, and that's the PUD that we have now in place, okay? Our storage building is 175 feet from the property line. Significantly different. Now, there's not gonna be any site lighting. The old plan, there were lights on the back. Now they shine down and stuff, but you can still see them. They still shine in the bedroom at night. So we have no lighting, site lighting. The office building right here, I believe it's a building code that you have to have a light at your front door. So there will be a light on the building. That's 175 plus 30 plus 24 and 20. That's a lot. That's way away from the property line and from Middle Drive. So the rezoning, the PUD is the tool to make the commercial compatible with the neighborhood. And so I think with the buffers and the layout, the retention, the use is way, way more compatible than the Walmart was. So I think that's all I have. If anybody has any
I have a
questions.
question, just curious, what kind of vegetation is back there now?
Oh, it's thick, it's oak trees. Well, there's actually homeless people that live back there. Yeah, so we get run down, but yeah, it's thick.
I don't have any more questions.
They had, this one shows some of the vegetation. See if I can get it oriented. That shows
There it goes.
some of it along that buffer
There's
area.
a sidewalk there too.
Yeah, we're putting a sidewalk in.
Oh, that's not one there now?
No, the Sepco had to put one in their frontage, but it stopped. And so, yeah, we're gonna continue that and bring it around the corner.
There's the current satellite area of
That one.
the vegetation.
There is a lot of trees. I don't have anything else.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No questions. Public comments
Thank you.
on this section?
You want to see this?
Yeah, I wanted to look at it.
Here, want me to put it back up on this?
No, that's okay. This is a picture of what the vegetation is. It's got trees, pine trees. This is my front yard, and that's the 327 Evan Parkway. And right now, it's kind of blocked from all the traffic and all that stuff, but if he's,
Aren't you
I
be
just
glad
wanted-
you'll get rid of the homeless?
all the pines and the oaks, I didn't know what they were
There's
gonna
always
do
been homeless.
down the road in
And
front of
then
our
we had to deal with that
but,
for many years.
um,
But we run along, we run small, I guess.
I just wanted to, if the PUD, if you change it, it stays with the land now? Would it stay with the land? And
Basically, I mean, if there were to change, it would go back through this process before they could change it. So it'll stay there. If plans did change for the development, we'd be right back here going through this again.
And the chances of it getting approved later on, that's what I'm worried about. You know, the chances of it getting approved, like if they don't work out and they decide they want to put a bar there or some kind of loud, I mean, right down the street, there's a bar, and we heard it from our house.
Amanda, can you just come give your name on the record since it's been
I'm
done?
sorry,
No, it's okay. It's you voted on, right?
This is all short. It's,
It's Deborah
I mean, it's not a ditch, it's not going to water.
that'd be vegetation.
Yeah, this is all vegetation, all undisturbed. This is exactly going to remain the same. Plus a lot of it's out in the right
And
of way,
there's
actually.
a big storm drain right here.
Yeah, and we're gonna run a pipe from here and tie it into that, so we can discharge it out after it's treated. This is stormwater treatment, yeah. So that's 30 feet wide.
Is this on the record?
22 and a half.
I have to say, guys, I mean, Mr. Chairman, do you want to call to order? I didn't want to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, it just makes a hard record, with y'all talking back.
Okay, what are we doing now?
I just wait for a motion.
I move to approve 2142 and adopt the PUD and site plan for 327 Eglin Parkway North.
Second.
All right, and it carries. And now, public comments, if we want to make any further comments on anything.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see it change, that'll look nice.
Yeah.
All right, planning supervisor? Board member comments? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
That's almost